Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So yes, as a more observant viewer might be able to tell, I am back home in Huddersfield with all of my books. And since I am so very happy to be back home with my bookcases and my lovely books, I thought I would do a repeat video. One of the very first videos that I filmed when I started my channel was a video about books for book lovers, giving recommendations of lots of different books that you can read that are about books, bookshops, libraries, because I always feel like there's something quite nice and affirming about a book about books, about the joy of reading, about the delights of a bookshop or a library. It's one of my personal bookish buzzwords. Whenever I hear a book is about books, I'm right there. And so over the past 3 years, I have accumulated even more recommendations, and so I wanted to share them with you today. The first recommendation that I have for you is Off the Shelf, a celebration of bookshops in verse by Carol Ann Duffy. This is a little bit more unusual compared to the other books on this list because it's actually a poetry collection. Lots of poems that were collected by multiple famous authors within the UK, where Carol Ann Duffy just gave them a prompt of write a poem that is about your love of bookshops. So in here, of course, you've got Carol Ann Duffy, you also have her daughter Ella, Gillian Clarke, Paul Farley, Liz Lockhead, Michael Longley, Daljit Nagra, Don Patterson, Dylan Thomas, and many more. One of my favourites actually comes from Dylan Thomas. I could never have dreamt that there were such goings on in the world between the covers of books, such sandstorms and ice blasts of words, such staggering peace, such enormous laughter, such and so many blinding bright lights, splashing all over the pages in a million bits and pieces, all of which were words, and each of which were alive forever, in its own delight and glory and oddity and light. A memoir about books that I really love and recommend to everybody is Dear Reader, The Comfort and Joy of Books by Cathy Rentzenbrink. In this, Cathy Rentzenbrink details her lifelong love of literature and how books have always been there through all of her trials and tribulations, all the ups and downs of life. From childhood love of reading to working in a bookshop as a young adult to becoming an author herself. I cannot even articulate to you the amount of passion and joy that Cathy Rentzenbrink writes about books. I feel like you just have to read it for yourself. But I think I read this within one sitting during a reading sprint online and just had such a great experience with it, so I really highly recommend this. One of my previous recommendations was Diaries of a Bookseller by Shaun Blythell, and shortly after reading that I read 7 Kinds of People You Meet in Bookshops, also by Shaun, and this is just really good fun. I feel like in any job there tends to be like repetitive queries that you get or customers, challenges that you come up against, and so in this Shaun is talking about, as you can tell, the 7 types of people that you would meet in a bookshop and how they generally tend to peruse, interact with booksellers and choose the books that they're planning on buying, or maybe not buying as the case may be. In this you've got the expert, the young family, the occultist, the loiterer, the bearded pensioner, the not so silent traveller, and the family historian. And then he also talks about the other notable person that you'd meet in a bookshop, which is of course the bookseller, so kind of turning the tables back onto himself. It's just a short little ditty thing, but it is really funny. And do tell me if you have read this yourself, what type are you? 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hamff is an absolute classic in this kind of genre. This is the true life story of New York-based Helene Hamff, who started up a correspondence with the former bookshop 84 Charing Cross Road. Very sadly, if you go to that spot in Charing Cross Road, it is now a McDonald's, which I think says a lot about the world. But she started writing to 84 Charing Cross Road when she was coming up short in New York bookshops and asking if they, as an antiquarian bookseller, could maybe look out and send any of the books that she was looking for. And over the course of a couple of decades, she and the booksellers developed this real strong kinship, even though they never actually met. At least by the time that 84 Charing Cross Road was originally published, they hadn't met. It's really a lovely snapshot in time through the late 1940s through to the 60s, seeing what life was like in post-war America and Britain, and how friendships can really be formed in the most unlikely of places, but all centered around books. I also have Book Love by Debbie Tung. This is a little comic strip graphic novel in which Debbie Tung talks about her love of reading and the different scenarios you can get yourself into with books, which I think for any book lover you'll find very relatable. I'm a massive fan of Debbie Tung's previous book, which is Quiet Girl in a Noisy World, which is all about introversion, and I believe she does have 2 other collections out, which I've not quite gotten round to, but considering how much I enjoyed these, I'm going to have to get to soon. Dear Dr. Murray, Letters to a Gentleman Publisher, collate lots of different notable letters from many different famous authors to the publishing house John Murray, which was originally founded in 1768. It was a family business. Every single generation had a John Murray, and this is just a little collection of the archive featuring letters from Jane Austen, Lord Byron, William Makepeace Thackeray, and so many more authors. And it's really interesting to get a sense of business correspondence between these famous figures. What Writers Read, edited by Pandora Sykes, collates 35 different authors' essays on a particular book that has really resonated with them through their life. Whether it's Monica Ali talking about her love of Pride and Prejudice, Mina Kandasamy talking about The God of Small Things, Sebastian Faulks talking about a book that he doesn't know what it was about, doesn't really know the title of it, but it had a profound impact on him anyway. I still feel like that was an odd choice for this prompt, but it is very, very true that certain books can just leave a lasting impression on you. Maybe if you are a writer, it impacts on your process, on what you think of as a great book, the kind of characters, the kind of plots that you go on to write yourself. I think this is just a really illuminating collection. Bookish Broads, Women Who Wrote Themselves into History by Lauren Marino with illustrations by Alexander Kilburn, gives a short little biography of a famous female author's life, as well as a stunning illustration. Have Charlotte Bronte, George Sand, or my favourite one that I still want as a print of Mary Shelley. I remember when I originally read this that I did give this a bit of criticism, I think because of the fact that the biography section obviously does have to be quite simplified down. You're only getting like a page or two to really mull over the lives of these women. But I think if you do want a kind of introduction to any of these figures, this wouldn't be a bad place to go. And also, just I would buy this just for the illustrations themselves. They are so beautiful. Why You Should Read Children's Books Even Though You Are So Old and Wise by Katherine Rundell. And I can't think of a better person to write about this, Katherine Rundell, who is very well known for her children's book, but has also shown recently through her biography of John Donne, Super Infinite, just her level of versatility as a writer. I feel like on the internet, and especially on BookTube, the argument will pop up every now and then. The debate on children's books and YA, and whether adults should really read that, or whether it has to be the case that once you cross a certain age, you have to neglect all of that completely in favour of more adult pursuits. How dare you be reading Sarah J Maas? You should be reading Charles Dickens instead. And Katherine Rundell really sets out a brilliant argument as to why integrating children's books and YA into your adult reading life does not mean that you are an immature reader, and that it can really enrich your reading experience. One of my favourite little moments is when she's saying that, you know, if the idea is that as you grow older, you've got to be going for more and more challenging, complex pieces of writing, and you're not allowed to read children's books or YA because that's just too easy. If you think of it as a linear progression, as you age, you've got to read harder stuff, then by the time you get to your deathbed, all you're left with is like Finnegan's Wake. And who really wants that to be the last book that they ever read, really? And then the last book I have to show you today is The Gifts of Reading, Essays on the Joys of Reading, Giving and Receiving Books, which is an essay collection featuring so many different authors. We have Robert McFarlane, William Boyd, Candice Carty-Williams, Max Porter, Philip Pullman, and so many more. There are so many different perspectives within this book, from the act of physically giving a book to somebody else, recommending a read to somebody, the way that books can open up your world and your opportunities, what somebody's book collection can say about a reader. This one's just really, really lovely. If you did actually want to get a taster of this book, then you can pick up The Gifts of Reading, tiny little pamphlet by Robert McFarlane, his essay in this tiny little pamphlet. Robert McFarlane talking about why he loves gifting books to people and how people gifting books to him has really made an impact on his life. I didn't actually realise when I first picked this up that this essay is the exact same essay as he wrote in this book, but I'm happy to have both of them on my shelf. So there we go, just 10 more book recommendations of books for book lovers. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken about today. I will also link down below the previous video that I did on this 3 years ago, and hopefully in the not too distant future I'll be able to do another recommendation video with 10 more books. If you want to give me any recommendations, I would very much appreciate it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.